This is WBSM On Demand.
Good morning. Well, the sun is trying to break through here in Fairhaven. It's trying to break through. So we'll have the mayor at 11 o'clock. It's always interesting. We have the mayor of New Bedford, John Mitchell, in here. And he's got some really interesting stuff going on with the golf course. Remember, they worked for a request for proposals to turn that into a advanced manufacturing campus, and increase the tax base of the city of New Bedford. Really, I still think it's a great idea. I wrote about it a number of years ago when the mayor proposed it. There's not a lot of industrial unused land, so I think it's a great idea. I thought it was a great idea when he initially proposed it. They're going to ask for another proposal. It's a request for interest, basically. Slightly different, but we'll have the mayor explain more about that. But again, it's onward and upward. So the city of New Bedford, in an attempt to increase the tax base, right, which takes taxes off the homeowners. So I think it's a good idea, and didn't work the first time, but there were a lot of things that happened. It's a big economic project, right? So you've got the interest rates. You literally had the war in the Ukraine. You had lots of stuff happening that upended a lot of plans. So anyway, we'll have the mayor at 11 o'clock. He'll talk more about that. At 10 o'clock, we have the only candidate I haven't interviewed yet for the state representative seat in the, doesn't really matter what the district is. It's the Westport, Freetown, Acushnet, North End of New Bedford district, right? With a little bit of Fall River. Manny Soers, who's a selectman in Westport. He's coming in. Now I've met Manny months ago. And we just finally we're able to get a date, and that's it's going to be good, right? I'm going to ask. He's running for state representative. He's been a selectman now for a couple of terms, I believe, in Westport. So Manny's an unenrolled candidate. Remember, there's a Republican, there's a Democrat, and there's a couple of unenrolleds. So Jesse St. Gelais is one unenrolled. Laura Hadley's the other unenrolled. I haven't met her. And Manny Soers is the other unenrolled candidate. So that race had a debate last night out in Westport. I wasn't there. I don't think many people were. I think there was probably about 50 people there. Sources tell me there are about 50 people there. And so I look forward to having a conversation with Manny on the air about the issues, his experiences, his thoughts. So if you want to ask him a question, you can at 508-996-0500. It's a pretty close race. The other thing that we got yesterday was a big endorsement. Shane Burgo, who's the leader of the Shane Denistas, which is the progressives, the small S socialists out there in New Bedford, right? Shane's a good guy. I don't agree with him on policies, but he endorsed Mark Sylvia yesterday. Mark Sylvia, of course, is running for the representative seat as a Democrat in Fairhaven, Mattapoisett, Marion, Rochester, and a little bit of Acushnet, and a little bit of New Bedford. So that's why Shane endorsed him. So Shane, of course, is the architect of rent control. He wants to bring rent control. He calls it rent stabilization, but it's really rent control to Massachusetts, particularly the city of New Bedford. So his endorsement in a state race is a big deal because I think it gives us some light into what Mark Sylvia's priorities are, right? Rent control, which I mean, if you own property, you realize how outrageous that is. Having the government tell you how much you can charge for your rent and how much you can increase it year after year, and it just takes a lot of the fluidity out of the economy. So, and then of course, Shane Burgo, leader of the Sandinistas, is the major proponent of the big tent cities, right? So that surprised me that Mark Sylvia would be in favor of tent cities, and because that is Shane Burgo's big issue. So there are homeless people in Fairhaven. Does that mean there's thoughts to put a tent city in Cushman Park, my neighborhood? I would hope not. Does that mean there's an idea, at least by some of these Democrats, to put a tent city in Lindsay Park, right? Can you imagine a tent city down at Fort Phoenix? I mean, we already had a migrant shelter here in Fairhaven, right? But these tent city ideas, it's a big deal among progressives. They like them. They use them. Basically what it is you erect some tents, and then you have a management team there and a health team there. So the homeless people come in, they get soup and food and things like that, right? Maybe they get some language lessons in English language, whatever. And I assume they sleep in like big army tents, you know? Many of you guys remember those. Remember the set of those big army tents? Those big wooden poles? I assume the taxpayer's going to have to set them up. I can't imagine you're going to have... we'll get some 11 Bravos out there to set those up for you migrants, right? But, I mean, you can see where... Be pretty good in Cushman Park, right? Put some porta potties, and you can bring the migrants in. You can bring in the homeless from New Bedford, or even from the woods of Fairhaven, right, or Cape Cod, up to Cushman Park, and set them up there. Shane wants to set them up out by the in Ward 1, out by the airport. You know, you can see the logic in that. In other words, big open land like Cushman Park or even Fort Phoenix. You could actually use West Island. Now that I think about it, West Island Beach, the public beach down there, the Fairhaven Beach, you could use that for a tent city. I mean, I'm just saying, now that Shane Burgo is got his paw over here in the business of Fairhaven and Mattapoisett and Marion and Rochester, you know, he could run wild. So, anyway, that was a big news yesterday that Shane Burgo, leader of the Sandinistas, has endorsed Mark Sylvia in the state representative race. And that is the towns of Marion and Mattapoisett, Fairhaven, Rochester, a sliver of Acushnet, and a sliver of Ward 1. That's why Shane Burgo is involved in the race, endorsing Mark Sylvia. So, 508-996-05. So you can get on the air. Does Shane Burgo's, who's a hell of a nice guy, don't get me wrong. He's a hell of a nice guy. Shane Burgo, does his endorsement of Mark Sylvia move it one way or the other for you? Does that pique your interest? I'd love to hear it at 508-996-0500. It is certainly coming down to the wire. Joe Pyers is the other candidate. Joe Pyers is on the school committee out in Rochester, Old Rochester School Committee. So he represents Rochester and Marion and Mattapoisett on the school committee. That's Joe Pyers. He's also a businessman. Owns a basement, Pioneer Basement, right? So you've heard a lot of Joe's ads here. I've invited Mark Sylvia. I sent him a Facebook Messenger, a number of them, actually. I haven't heard from him yet, but I'd love to hear Mark Sylvia. I hear he's a good guy. I think Natalie's voting for him. But I'm going with Joe Pyers. Joe came and sat in the studio, answered my questions, and I like the cut of his jib. You know what I mean? He's my kind of guy. Anyway, We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. I'm Chris McCarthy. Because that's Van Halen playing the song Panama, which is what this place is going to look like if we keep up the migration and the tent cities, right? So, for those of you who think that I'm exaggerating about building a tent city in Cushman Park or in Fort Phoenix or down at West Island, folks, the other night, Shane Burgo led his housing committee in a big discussion about tent cities and about the region doing more. In other words, people in Fairhaven picking up their slack, right? What they conceive of as our slack. That New Bedford's doing all this stuff for the homeless, and Fairhaven ought to do more. Dartmouth ought to do more. Acushnet ought to do more. Look at all the open land out there in Rochester and Mattapoisett and Marion. You could build a lot of tent cities out there, right? You could put Mass and Cass right down by the old Mattapoisett Inn, right? You could put Mass and Cass down there on the waterfront. You could put Mass and Cass down at Ned's Point. Why should Ned's Point not have a tent city when New Bedford's going to get one? If Shane Burgo has his way, right? And he's endorsing Mark Sylvia to be the state representative from Mattapoisett and Marion, Fairhaven, Rochester, Acushnet, and Ward 1. Ward 1 is where Shane Burgo, leader of the Shane-Denistas, wants to erect his tent city for the homeless and the migrants, right, to live in a tent and get medical attention and food and, I assume, language skills. Well, why should that be only in New Bedford? Again, folks, they had the conversation the other night about what's happening in the whole region. Why should Fairhaven not have to have a tent city? Why should Cushman Park be so pristine? What, just because kids run on the track down there? Kids should learn about homelessness too. Right? After all, with Shane, they probably will be. So, I'm just wondering, folks, does Shane's Burgo endorsement of Mark Sylvia impact your decision in how you're going to vote in the upcoming state representative election in Fairhaven and Mattapoisett and Marion, Rochester? You've got Republican Joe Pyers on the ballot, right? You hear his ads here. Joe Pyers, of course, family man on the school committee out there in Rochester, but he represents Marion and Mattapoisett as well as Rochester. Tri-Town, right? And Mark Sylvia has been endorsed. And by the way, it's not just Shane Burgo who's supporting Mark Sylvia. He's got other New Bedford City Councils. Maria Giesta from Ward 2, the murder capital of New Bedford. Maria Giesta. Maria Siesta, asleep at the switch. She was at his fundraiser. She's a donor to Mark Sylvia's campaign. Does that influence? I mean, I would imagine if you live in Ward 2, you say, hey, Maria's our gal, right? You can always count on Maria Giesta to propose ending the meeting early, right? Meeting to adjourn, made by Councilor Siesta, right? Off to the bar room she goes. I mean, it's amazing. So, anyway, does that influence your decision on how you're going to vote in the upcoming election here in Fairhaven and Marion and Mattapoisett and Rochester for state representative? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you think, well, what they do in New Bedford is fine for New Bedford. What we do over here is what we do over here. Maybe Shane has no influence. I don't know. He seems to me to have a lot of influence, though. He's a good guy, just wrong on the policy questions. And he's decided to throw his tremendous support behind Mark Sylvia for state representative. I've invited Mark in, but he just doesn't seem to want to come in and answer my questions or yours. 508-996-0500 so you can get on the air. We will have Manny Soers joining us in the next hour. Manny, of course, is a selectman out in Westport. He's running for the open seat as well for state representative. He's an unenrolled candidate. He's got a Democrat and a Republican opponent. You just heard an ad for one of the Republicans. And you've got a couple of unenrolleds in that race. So it should be a very interesting election night, both in Fairhaven and in Westport and Acushnet and Freetown. We will have 2 new members of the State House on the House side, and we'll have a new senator, too, because there's a Senate race going on in Marion and Wareham and Raynham and Taunton. Republican and Democrat and unenrolled running in that race. So conceivably, we could have an unenrolled senator, an unenrolled member of the House of Representatives, and a Republican or Republican senator or Republican House member from this area. Brand new people. So that is going to be really interesting change. No matter what, you're going to have some new faces, some new blood in the State House. We'll see how quickly they get absorbed up by the machine, right? You vote over here if you want a key to the men's room or the ladies' room. You shall vote with the speaker. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and WBSM is teaming up with Primacare in an effort to prevent, identify, and cure a disease that strikes 1 in 8 women, but less commonly in men, but it does strike men as well. So a simple mammogram can be your best weapon in the fight against breast cancer, allowing for early detection, and that's the best chance for successful treatment, right? Awareness, detection, treatment, cure. That's the key to beating the disease. Breast Cancer Awareness Month on WBSM is brought to you by Primacare. Primacare by your side. So the fallout from the comedian that Trump had at his rally is still happening. Last night, CNN, I think they spent 2 hours talking about the comedian as if he's going to be the Secretary of State, right? I mean, it's amazing. Look, guys, we have serious issues in the country. You can come down either way on them, right? We've got inflation. We've got war in the Middle East. We've got a migration problem. Whether you agree with open borders or not, you realize it hasn't been done right? So for CNN to spend 2 hours on some stupid jokes told by a guy who's going back to the rubber chicken circuit, right? Going back to doing Indian casinos and casino boats, right? Going back on the circuit. I mean, it is absolutely outrageous. There's a lot of reasons to not like Donald Trump. His choice of comedians is not one, okay? Take your vote a little more seriously than that, right? Ask for your news to be a little more serious about that. I watched a clip from Jon Stewart, right? No fan of Donald Trump, right? The Daily Show, of which one of my fraternity brothers was a longtime member, Rob Corddry. So, The Daily Show yesterday had a clip with Jon Stewart telling everybody, and this is the guy who really hates Trump, does not want Trump to win the election, came back on The Daily Show basically to influence the election away from Trump. But even he couldn't jump onto the hysteria because it's foolishness. The guy told a couple of bad jokes, tasteless jokes. But that's not how you vote. You don't vote on things like people's jokes who aren't going to be in the administration. Anyway, 508-996-0500. Good morning. Thanks for holding.
Good morning, my friend.
What's happening?
Well, I want to find out from you because I got a flyer in the mail the other day. Who is Nurse Dan Sullivan, is it?
Nurse Dan Sullivan. He's running as a Republican for Congress.
Against Bill Keating?
Against Bill Keating.
Well, that's unusual. What can you tell me about him? Do you know much about him?
So I interviewed him with Marcus last cycle. He ran 2 years ago. I interviewed him then. He made a lot of claims. This was 2 years ago. It's not his platform today, I don't believe. But basically that the election was stolen. And I asked him how in Massachusetts, where we have paper ballots and hand counted, right? They do machines, but they'll do a hand count. And he accused all these clerks of being involved in election fraud. And I said to him, that's an absolutely outrageous claim. I think he's not doing that this time around. But that is my one time with him.
I see. Oh, okay.
He's worth a protest vote, you know. If you're not happy with what the Democrats are trying to do, maybe Nurse Dan's worth a protest vote.
Well, he is a Republican, so I was wondering, what are you going to do about that? Since your friend Bill Keating is...
Oh, no, I'm going to vote for Bill Keating. I'll tell you why. Because
let's not make this a Maura Healey-type vote.
No. Bill Keating has always been responsive to my request to this program, and I think he has sound foreign policy ideas, which is what I look for from my Congressman Bill Keating. So I got to stick with Bill Keating on this. Do I appreciate all his votes? I certainly don't. But I can tell you what, Bill Keating stood with the Republicans on defunding sanctuary cities. You may not like that vote, for me to repeat that vote now, but he took that vote. He stood with the Republicans being against sanctuary cities. So I appreciate the congressman for that vote.
So you don't think Nurse Dan Sullivan is very serious, then, a very serious candidate?
Well, I'd hate to put that on him because he's running again for the second time, and that says a lot to me, right? And he's a nurse, and obviously nurses are very smart, and they're an important part. But I think I'd rather have him as a nurse than as my congressman.
So he is a nurse, then. That's not...
Oh, yeah, no, that's not... No, it's not... No, he's a legit nurse, yeah.
Oh, okay, because I was watching something on C-SPAN the other day that somebody was called Doctor, and that was their first name was Doctor or something like that. You know, so... You
watching the Grit? Were you watching Grit? Were you watching those old cowboy movies?
Oh, I watch Grit all the time, you know. I want to know one thing.
Yes.
Because I know sometimes you have to go to dialysis and stuff. When you're sitting there, do you have the Grit channel on?
So I could, because I have my... They don't have it at dialysis, but I have my iPad with me. But so I used to watch... When I went to dialysis in Fall River, they had... I think they had Grit there because I used to watch some old cowboy shows, black and white ones.
Yes, well, I was going to suggest, I thought you might have access to it there, watching Guy Williams and Zorro.
I watch Zorro when I get out of here sometimes. I go home like on Wednesday.
Terrific.
Someday I'll put Zorro on. Yeah, like as a background as I'm doing my phone calls. Oh, it's great stuff. And the old Lone Rangers. Oh, yeah, I watch those.
Yeah. Well, the Lone Rangers, they get some color Lone Rangers.
They do have colored Lone Rangers.
But I liked Guy Williams very much. And so it brings me back to my childhood because those things were played when I was about 7, 8, 9 years old, you know. So it brings me back to my childhood to watch that thing. But I thought it's very entertaining. You know the thing, too, that I get about the Rifleman with Chuck Connors, and we're going way off of Nurse Dan Sullivan, but that's okay.
Yes.
When you watch the Rifleman, a lot of the actors come back. They play different roles. I think there's a guy, John Anderson, I think his name is, and he constantly comes back in a different role. And I remember watching it as a kid, and I never realized that, you know, that the actors were coming back and playing different characters and stuff like that. And I accepted it. But I do like Zorro, and I do like the Rifleman because it's basic, you know, good against evil.
Yes.
It's nice and there's no, you know, and again, they try to leave you with some sort of moral to the story, that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. I love those old Rifleman shows.
Yeah, and I make a vote for Zorro. From what I understand, too, Zorro lasted about, I guess, 2 or 3 seasons, and it was stopped not because it was unpopular. I guess there was a battle between Disney and ABC, and they wanted...
Call me. Are you still there? Hold on. You're still there, I think. You're still there, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess ABC wanted to make some money as well as Disney on the Zorro program, and they were fighting them for some sort of rights and stuff.
Oh, the
like
catalog
that.
rights.
Yeah, and so Disney killed it, and then the show was very popular, and that sort of stuff. But no, Guy Williams, I think he's an excellent swordsman. He says he's not, but he looks great out there. In fact, I did some research with the stupid phone there,
yes.
And this guy Fred Cravens, who taught Douglas Fairbanks Sr. and Errol Flynn and Tyrone Power, and also taught Guy Williams for Zorro, so that sort of thing. It's funny because I think the swashbuckling thing, there's only a certain few people that can play it. Some people that can be great actors, but it just doesn't work out,
Oh, absolutely. But that's a real physical skill.
Yeah, oh yeah. And Guy Williams, researching into him too, he was actually Sicilian. That wasn't his name. He was Italian, Sicilian, that sort of stuff. But that was his stage name, I guess. But I enjoyed him very much in that role, and Sergeant Garcia, and there's a lot of tongue in cheek in it too, and I like it too. But that sort of thing,
Now they had a John Wayne on Sunday marathon. Ended with a Shootist, which is appropriate because that was his last movie.
Yeah, great movie.
That was a great movie, and I watched Marshall Cahill. I've watched that a couple times recently. Mm-hmm. That's just a great movie, Marshall Cahill.
Yeah. Well, you got me away from Nurse Dan Sullivan by getting me to the things that I liked, with the grits, the grit program there. But,
well, politics it should only be a sliver of your life. It's important, but you should have other things, and certainly you do. Look, I think that Nurse Dan is a legitimate candidate. He's a nurse. I just think that Bill Keating. I agree with him on the Ukraine stuff. I know a lot of people don't, but I agree with Bill on the Ukraine stuff. And he's always been responsive to this program. He's got a great staff over there. I can't see any reason to change.
Mm-hmm. Well, back to politics, too. There was something that came on TV last night late, too, because of Trump was on. But they did Ascent to Power. And I know I like Harry Truman. You don't. I'm not going to argue about him and Alger Hess because I know you're an expert on that stuff. But it kind of pointed out in this book, Ascent to Power, by David Roll, I think the guy's name was, was that when Harry Truman took over as president, or was about becoming vice president, he already knew, and Washington already knew, that FDR was not long for this world.
Oh, yeah.
Again, when Truman was asked to take this, all right, he tried to refuse, and supposedly, according to this author, FDR put him on the phone and said, "Hey, listen, we got people over there that are giving up their lives, and now your country needs you, and this is what you're doing." So we off the phone, he said, "Oh, expletive," like that, and agreed. Okay, and so he took over. But while he was there and taking over, now there's a transition, and he didn't want to get rid of FDR's staff that quickly, and I guess it was either Harold Ickes or Harry Hopkins or something that said to him, if my memory goes correct. He says, "Hey, Harry, after a while, you got to get your own staff. You got to have your own guys. And so,
well, Hopkins probably wanted to go on Stalin's staff anyway.
Well, another thing about Harry was that he said right away. He says, "Well, he said I do want to get rid of Frances Perkins. I don't want a woman on my staff." So it goes to show how things have changed in these times, And he was a pretty salty talker, and referred to the Negroes in the world as with the N-word, that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Coming from Missouri, and his parents and everything, grandparents, I should say, were slaveholders, and his mother visited the White House and did not want to sleep in the Lincoln bedroom. Okay, so the guy pointed out a few things about Harry that weren't very complimentary, but I kind of feel that he dealt pretty well with, the Marshall Plan.
Well, and he integrated the Army.
Yes, yes. So he's a guy that came from a certain background, but that didn't affect his views in the future, that sort of thing.
Right.
So my question is, too, again, if Kamala Harris does win, okay, will she have to deal with some of the people that put her there and eventually get rid of her, and bring in her own staff? Because for the FDR people, to tell Harry, when he was finishing out FDR's administration. Hey, you got to get your own people. That's something. I wonder if that does happen, will she do the same thing?
Well, I don't think there's any love lost between the Biden staff and her staff, but she doesn't have a good track record holding on with staff. Kamala.
Well, she doesn't have much of a track record anyway. Let's put it that way. I think they're looking to run her like they ran Joe Biden.
Oh yeah.
I don't think she has the background like I told you that Hillary has, that sort of thing.
Oh no, she's not Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, whatever you say about her, is a very serious person.
Yeah, and a strong-willed person too. I think, right? Whether she's right or wrong, that sort of thing. So. My way or the highway, Hillary Clinton. Oh, well, that sounds like, she's a former prosecutor. That should make her a candidate. Maybe that means we get somebody around here that's a former prosecutor that could run for president.
Thank you, my friend, as always.
Okay, take care. Watch Zorro.
I will. Zorro's on today, I think, at noontime. We'll take a quick break, folks, and remember, we have Manny Soers, who's a candidate for state representative in Westport and Acushnet and Freetown, in Fall River, in the north end of New Bedford. The Paul Schmid seat. Manny's will be in the next hour. Stick around. We'll be right back. In your calls at 508-996-0500. Let's go right back to the phones. Good morning. Thanks for holding.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
Well, interesting culmination last night with the Kamala Harris speech that she gave, which is supposed to be her last one, and it was at the Ground Zero site for January 6th. But I guess the funny thing is I just laughed out loud last night because the hypocrisy hit like full volume. So so for 2 weeks, the Kamala Harris and her campaign has been demonizing Trump and all the supporters, calling them fascists and then Nazis and Hitler and everything leading up to the Madison Square Garden Sunday rally. And then last night she came out and her whole pitch was at Ground Zero for January 6th, I am the unifier. And I was like, what? Wait, how did that come out of her mouth? And then the same time that she's saying I'm the unifier, on another channel, Joe Biden is in an interview, and he was asked about the comment about, Puerto Rico being garbage. And he said, well, the only real garbage I see are the Trump supporters. At the same time that she's saying, I'm the unifier, which is exactly what he said 4 years ago. So, hypocrisy is a soft, nice word to really say liar, because that's basically what it is.
Right.
And I just had to point that out to you. I was laughing my off last night.
No, I saw the clip of Biden calling all the people who are supporting Donald Trump garbage. I thought, Mr. President, that's no way to treat half the American people. And again, it just shows the base feeling of a lot of these Democrats out there. That is just a less sophisticated way of doing what Hillary Clinton did, which is to call everybody who didn't vote for her deplorable.
Well, it's a loser strategy, because if you really need everybody, then
right.
Going out and trying to separate and demonize, which is what that is. But then to come back and say, "Hey, I'm actually here to unify you guys," and it's unbelievable. I can't wait until next week. Let's put it that way.
Garbage of the world, unite! You have nothing to lose but your chains. Go vote.
You and me.
Go vote. Thank you, my friend. Yeah, guys. Again, we get caught up in the national, and I understand it gets a lot of media time, right? But really, the person that impacts your life the most is your mayor, your selectmen, your school committee members, your state representatives, your state senators. And those men and women are all on the ballot, along with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and along with a handful of like Green Party and some communists and stuff at the top of the ticket. So don't forget to vote down ballot. I say that all the time because a lot of people don't vote down ballot. So what does that mean? For those of us who do, it makes our vote mean more, right? Our vote down ballot means more. People say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I live in Massachusetts. I'm going to vote for Trump, but it doesn't matter because he's not going to win the state, which may not be the truth. But anyway, your vote counts lower on the ballot, right? U.S. Senate, we've got a pretty good race going with John Deaton, who's a Republican, against Elizabeth Warren. And then you have, of course, we got the state rep seat. Depending on where you live anywhere in Acushnet, you're going to have a new state representative next year. Fairhaven's going to have a new state representative. Westport's going to have a new state representative. And you got a real big crowd of people in the race. You've got, I would say, every type of flavor in the race, right? Unenrolleds, Democrats, a lot of unenrolleds, Republicans, Democrats. So get out and vote. It really means something. And by the way, it encourages them. That's why I tell you to vote. It encourages them. Need some encouragement? Well, maybe not. The New England Patriots, they are showing their resilience. This past Sunday when they got a last-minute win over the New York Jets. So the New York Jets, of course, the New York Jets quarterback was stoned on hallucinogens. So who knows? But this week, the Pats head to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Titans are 1-6, so they have their struggles. But the Patriots have a real good shot of stringing together 2 wins in a row, right? Remember the days of Brady and Belichick? You wouldn't talk like that. But anyway, the Patriots against the Titans. Kickoff is at 1 p.m. Pregame on WBSM begins at 10 a.m. The New England Patriots all season long here on WBSM. We're going to go to the phones. Good morning. Thanks for holding.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
Good. Hey, I saw an article this morning, and I wanted to bring it up to you.
Okay.
It was about Eversource going and try and get a 30% increase in, pricing for, electric and gas in the area. Did you see that?
So I saw it, but I did not delve into the article. But I did see that they're looking for a price increase. And can you blame them? I mean, they're dealing with inflation the way everybody else is. But 30% seems like a lot.
Right. I mean, that's going to hit a lot of people here on top of everything else. And I just wanted to just raise that flag because people are struggling as it is. And hopefully our representatives and our senators, will respond. And, they deserve something. But same time, we need our help, too. So if you can help out with that, too, I know you would bring up these issues and stuff.
Oh, I'm absolutely the people's lobbyist. I will reach out to the representatives as I speak with them. And in the next hour, we're going to have a local selectman and who's a candidate for state representative. We'll put a bug in his ear about that now. I'm sure he's on top of it because he's a consumer like the rest of us. So we'll deal with that, my friend.
As far as the election goes,
yes, sir.
I just think that I said it before and I'll say it again. It's going to come down to, she shot herself in the foot so many times, and I don't think she has any, Kamala has any credibility at this point. And Joe, he hasn't helped her. But the comment about Trump supporters being garbage, I mean, this stuff, the hate politics, it's just useless.
They're so hateful. Thanks for calling, my friend. Yep. They are so hateful. Let me see what I'm doing. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Hello, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay. I'll tell you, they call Trump a lot of names, but I can tell you one name they're never going to call him.
What's that?
A globalist.
That's true. He's not a globalist, and we like that about him, right?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why they can't close the border down because the other side, because they never could close it because China and everybody owns them. Like you say, Waltz went over there 30-something times already, and he wants to be the vice president. And I heard a lot of stories about him going out with some girl that was related to the premier. Could have even been the daughter. Did you hear that story?
It looks like he's got a Chinese girlfriend who's high up, whose father is high up in the Communist Party.
Yes, that's it.
They call it a honey trap.
Honey trap, yeah.
When they lure you in with a girl and then they've got you. They did it to Swalwell over there as well.
Yeah, another thing I wanted to bring up while I got, what do you get, 3 minutes for these calls?
Go ahead.
Okay. One more thing I want to tell you. They keep saying Trump didn't do the border. Well, he had 3/4 of that border done, and he had all the material down and ready to go. And the first day Biden was in, he kicked the contractor out. He said, "Get out, we're not going to do this." And what they do, they sold all the material to Canada for pennies on the dollar. Remember that?
I do.
Thank you. A lot of people don't realize that.
Thanks for the call, my friend, as always. Don't be a stranger. Good morning. Thanks for holding.
Good morning, Chris.
What's happening?
More on the gas increase.
Yes.
Okay, the reason why they're going up is because they get hit with a lot of new regulations. They have to add supervisors and a lot of stuff on the jobs. And if they don't do that, they're going to get heavily fined. And that's just going to go turn around onto the consumer. Most of that whole rate increase they're looking for is due to what our government's doing to the gas companies. So we're screwed either way.
I think you're right about that. And they're trying to get rid of natural gas as an option, which is outrageous.
Yes.